quick, rather ad hoc, warts and all overview of processing a lunar image in a little bit more detail. This is an image I took last night, a crater that I now know is called Bailey, sitting right on the limb near what remains of the terminator of a nearly full moon. So if we open this folder up that I prepared, having pulled these images across from the laptop, this is the original image. Have a look at it. Let's see what we've got. Now you'll notice lots and lots of turbulence. The scene was not particularly good last night, to say the least. But anyway, that's the starting point. If we come out of that, what we'll do is we'll take that file across to AutoStack it. And the main thing to do, because you notice the color of this, well, this color is not right because it's on auto detect. But if I set it to Rgb, you see that I've got an IR pass filter in place, and that puts this sort of hue onto the image. But this is in fact the correct debayer pattern. You then move this box, the stabilizing anchor as they call it, to an area that you regard as having the most sort of detail for the program to latch onto. So I'm just going to shift that down a bit. There we go. So it's got a bit of crater detail there to hang on to. And the first thing we then do is do this analysis of the available files, of which I think there are about 3,000. So if we click Analyze, now this is going to take a while, so I'm going to pause the video and come back to you as soon as it's finished. Good, that's now completed, and you can see it's presented us with this graph that shows the general range of quality within the capture. Now, these individual up and down lines are the literal variation in frames from one frame to another, but this curve here shows you the actual range of quality available, and obviously we want the best quality to be selected, so I normally go to this line here, which is the 75% line, and I never process anything below that. So if you move your mouse to the point where the curve intersects the 75% line, and then you use Control click, and that places and tells you that 12% of the files or the frames will be used to actual process. We need to just clear these alignment points from the previous. Now you've got a couple of options. One thing to say, you can vary the size of your alignment point, and there is, I suppose, a natural school of thought that says, oh, the more alignment points the better, but in actual fact the program needs a given area to enclose an area that it's aligning, so you really don't want to go too small. And on something like this, if you see, I've chosen 200. So if I go and put an alignment point on this crater here, you can see that the box just nicely encloses. Now if I clear it, I could go to 104, and that would just about cover off the size of the crater. And you can go through and manually add alignment points to significant craters within the image. The alternative is clear those off to, and I'll go back to 200, is just to say place the grid automatically. Now if you've got a particularly dark image, you can help this by using this brightness function here. Doesn't alter the image at all, but what it does is when you put an alignment points on, it gives you a brighter image to work with, as you can see here. In this case, it's not necessary, but with some fairly dark images, you might choose to do this. Anyway, I'm going to say place grid, and there it will be. It'll place a grid on, and you can see what it's done. What I then tend to do is just drop a few onto clearly identifiable and significant features within the image, just to make sure that they're fully considered when it comes to stacking. So that done, you then press stack. You'll notice that I've ticked RGB align, so it's going to align the RGB on the fly, and it's obviously going to save it into a folder. I tend not to use the sharpening function on Lunar images, although I do on occasions do it with a planetary image. But anyway, we'll say stack, and as this will take a little bit of time, I'm going to pause the video again. So click stack and all goes. Right, it's pretty much reached the end of the process. It's just doing this final align point recombination, and it will come up, as you can see here, and say done. What you can now do in preparation for the next one is clear off, but that will now be saved back into the original folder. So if I close this down, you'll see, and it's saved it in a folder which is clearly marked reference to the percentage that you've actually processed. So it'll always have a number here that aligns with the number that you previously selected. So then we will go close this down, and we will go to Registacks. Now you can't drag and drop these files into Registacks. You can some files, but not this format. So we go to select, and we will go and we will find this. Now this is one I produced previously, but this is one with the correct Bayer pattern. So we'll select that, which is the one we've just done. And I always go show full image and also show the processing area, because Registacks doesn't process the whole image, it will process a zone, and when you're happy with that zone you click do it all and it'll apply that correction everywhere else. So let us first of all tackle the wavelets. These are the wavelets here on the left. You have various wavelet levels that affect various parts of the tonal range, and it will depend very much on the tonal range, the color range within the image. For the moon, I normally start quite simply at this top level, and I just drag it straight away across. Now you can see in the processing area it's immediately sharpened up. If I go do it all, it will then apply that to the whole area. Now you may not be able to see this, but just at the top you're getting a bit of interference from the Bayer pattern, and the way you overcome this is by putting a little bit of denoise in. I would normally put about 20 as a start point, and then go do it all again. You have to keep remembering to say do it all, and click on that button, because otherwise when you come to save the image it will tell you that you haven't done it, which is nothing's lost, but it's just a good habit to get into. So that's removed that pattern. What you can then do is actually put a little bit of sharpening in. So I put 20 in, and you can see here, again, do it all. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into Rgb Balance, And you can see, because of the IR pass filter, we've got a fair discrepancy. Now you can go in and do an automated RGB align, but I found the results aren't always that clever. It's probably better to just tweak the alignment and just visually look at what's happening to the color. Take the red back, and then I'll move the blue to the right. And if I say do it all again, that'll apply that color correction across the piece. Now very often I'll convert these images to monochrome anyway. To a degree, they often look better as a monochrome image, but also you might well be in an area where there's really little or no benefit from colour. I might then just tweak the second level of wavelet. Different people have different ways of doing this, but this is my way. I'm not Frank Sinatra, by the way. So that's brought that image up. Can maybe make it a little bit lighter by using the gamma function. Now what I do, particularly when I'm doing montages, I like to have a numerical value to hit if I'm doing processing. So rather than actually physically pulling the curve up manually, which you can do, I go down here and just tweak a couple of times on the up arrow, and it gives me a figure, 1.2, that I can apply to any other segment within the montage. But then again, do it all, and through it comes, and it will. So I think we'll save that, and as we've done it all, it won't tell us to do that. We just say save image, and again it will offer the folder. We'll go up into the folder and we'll save it as a Bailey, but we'll call it Bailey version 4. Save. And we can then close down Registax, and I will then open up Photoshop. Now I use, because I'm a cheapskate, I use CS2, one of the early versions of Photoshop, and actually one of the ones you can get for nothing, which is why I've used it. But I also use it in conjunction with something called the Nick Collection, which adds some quite powerful tools to the mix. So anyway, that's it open. We'll now go and find our file. Open. We'll go to the desktop. And we'll go to the processing tutorial. And there's our version 4, which will open up. Now this is where I have options, but the first thing I do, because you see there's a little bit of movement here, let's chop the image slightly, so we'll draw a rectangle over it, and we'll crop it. So we take out the irregularities, deselect. We can then, and I think I will, change it to monochrome, so we've got image mode, grayscale. It says discard color information, but I then go back mode and go back to RGB, because that gives me access to some of the other tools that I have available, which won't work if it's a monochrome image. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate the layer. And you would have seen me do this before. You convert it to overlay. Very tempting to leave things like that, but what I shall do is go to filter, other, high pass filter, set it about 200. It's normally 150 to 200, and we'll say OK to that. Then we go to layer, layer mask, hide all. Now what this then allows me to do, as I've explained previously, is take the brush tool. You can adjust the brush size to suit, and then you can go over areas of the image and just sharpen them individually. Don't go willy-nilly over the whole image, because you might as well just do a general sharpening if that's the case. This gives you much more control, allows you to bring in enhancements where they're needed. Don't know how well this will translate, but when you do it online, on screen, on your own machine, you'll find that the result is quite significant and well worth having, as it were. Now, in order that you avoid the look of it being far too artificial, what I would then do, having done what I think is enough to the image, will then go up into filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and you can see this is the mask down here, and this is an enlargement of it, showing you that because I've applied a 12 pixel softening, it softens the edges. Now I think that might be a little bit too soft, so I'm going to drop it back down to 8, say OK, and then merge the layers down. So that's the enhanced variant thereof. I do also occasionally, because I quite like this function, Smart Sharpen. You have to be careful not to go overboard with this. So I generally apply a fairly low percentage. I've dropped it down to 30%. But it does very often just add another little bit of crispness to the image. And we'll save that as the finished image. So save as. Interestingly, if you're going to publish on Facebook, which kills these images, I tend to favour the PNG file format, and I'll put the date in, I'll do a name of a creator, but I also tend to like to put something in that indicates to me that it has been through Photoshop. So we'll save that. Okay. And I'll put this image up alongside the little tutorial. And I'll also try and put the AVI up as a file, so if anybody wants to take it off and practice and see or prove that they can do better than me, please feel free.